All right. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. This is the YHUHderek channel, and I am Ayana, your facilitator today. Today, this is a follow-up to Yahuwah's calendar in the Gregorian. For those of you who purchased the calendar, I received many questions and some complaints. And so this video is showing how I went about calculating and answering some of those issues. So here we are. Here we are, explained Yahuwah's calendar, calculating the year. But first, as always, I would love to thank these contributors who help keep YHUHderek going. We use donations to buy materials, to support research, to purchase media like pictures, other things, video, to make videos for your information and educational purposes. So we want to thank all of these people, and I would implore you to please consider donating to this channel. And we do have two avenues that you can do that. The first one is PayPal. You can find the YHUHderek channel under this email, which is an email that you can use to correspond with me. And then also through CashApp, which is $YHUHderek. Lastly, we do have the calendar. If you would like to purchase, we have two versions. We have just the feasts, which is a JPEG that you can put on the desktop of your computer to know when the feasts are for this year. And then we have the full calendar, and you can purchase them here at this link. Thank you very much, and please continue to support us. All right, so since the release of the last video, Yahuwah's calendar in the Gregorian, and the release of the full calendar, there have been many questions and confusion about how it was calculated. In an effort to answer all of those questions, this video was made to explain the terms, methods, and calculations used to make the calendar and its differences from the Gregorian calendar. All right, so this is what will happen within this video. I will talk about the parameters of the calendar. I will talk about finding the first day and everything that entails in that. I will talk about an inconvenient Shabbat. And lastly, we'll compare the two calendars, Yahuwah's calendar and a Gregorian. So the first section, parameters of the calendar. All right, so how did I go about finding everything? Obviously, I searched diligently through the scriptures, and this is how I compiled each component. All right, I actually have a whole document that goes into the scriptures and a lot of stuff that's not in this video. Those are my notes on how to compile the calendar. It was a lot of information. And so from that, I'm making this video. So day is when there is light, according to scripture, and heat outside. Day is about 12 hours long and starts in the morning through to the evening. And I was able to compile this using these 5 verses, which you see in red here. Okay. As far as the week, it contains 7 days, 6 days of working, and 1 day of rest, which is the Shabbat. It is important to know that the Shabbat is at the end of the week. This can be found in the whole creation week, as people call it, and that's from Bereshith or Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 1, all the way through to chapter 2, verse 4. As far as the month, there is nothing in scripture that outright plainly says how many days in a month are there within the scripture book, the 66 books that people call the Bible. But I did go through and I looked up, every day in the calendar to see what verses would come, right? And the maximum amount of days I looked for a month did not pass 30. So there are no verses in scripture where it says, oh, on the 31st day of this month. There's none. So 30 is the max. This can be found in 2 verses pertaining to Moshe and Aaron, Moses and Aaron, their deaths. More clear evidence can be found in the book of Enoch, and I have those verses right here. So one says about the death of Moshe and how Yasharel mourned 30 days. The other one talks about the death of Aaron or Aaron and how Yasharel mourned 30 days also. The book of Enoch does say definitively that months are 30 days long, and you can look up those verses. All right. So as to the year, using scripture, the evidence that there are 12 months in a year can be found in not 2 verses, but a chapter and a verse in scripture. The Chronicles verses shows that Yasharel operated on a 12-month annual cycle in the past. And the Revelation verse shows that the same 12-month cycle will continue into the future. In addition, the number of days in a year can be found in the books of Canuck, which is Enoch, and Jubilees. So I have all of these scriptures here. Chronicles talks about how many soldiers were provided for each month and who was the head of the soldiers and things like that, and it goes through 12 months. Revelation says that the fruit, the tree of life, it will have 12 fruits on it, representing every month. Enoch clearly says that there's 12 months, and so does Jubilees. Overall, YHUH's calendar is 12 months long, containing 52 weeks and 364 days. Each month is 30 days long. In addition to the 12 30-day long months, there are 4 what Canuck or Enoch calls intercalary days. We, in the present day, know those days as solstices and equinoxes, right? There's 4 of them in a year. All right. Usually at the end of every 3rd month. Each month contains 4 7-day weeks, plus an additional 2 days to make 30 days, right? Because 4 weeks with 4 times 7 is 28 days, right? 4 weeks, 7 days each, 28 days, plus the extra 2 days make it 30. Each individual week has 7 days, ending with the 7th day being a Shabbat. Shabbat actually does mean that. It means rest, and it also means 7. Shabbat does, right? Not Shabbat, but Shabbat, the root word. Okay, or Shab is the root word. Shabbat is an extension, and Shabbat means the sign of the Shabbat. All right, and every day is about 12 hours long, beginning with sunrise in the morning through to evening when the sun lowers in the sky. It is through these scriptures that the parameters of YHUH's year is established. So I went about finding the construction of the year, construction of the month, construction of the week, and construction of the day. All right. Now that we have those parameters, the next thing that you have to do is find the first day for when it actually starts within the year. So the first day of the calendar, as stated in the video, when is the beginning? The first day of the calendar is what part of the year it starts can be established in 3 verses. Shemuth, Exodus, chapters 12:2 and chapter 13:4, and Bereshith, which is Genesis, chapter 1, verses 3 through 5, and I have them written out here. The underlined section is what's important for finding the first day, right? It shall be the first month of the year to you. This month, this is before the Exodus that happens. This shall be the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So not only does it says that it's the beginning of the months, but it's the first month of the year. So speaking in terms of YHUH, it would be the Rosh Hashanah and the Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Hashanah, as you know, means the beginning of the year. Rosh Chodesh means the beginning of the month. All right. And the first month of the year is called Abiyab, or as you know it, Abib. The first day, YHUH divided the light from the darkness. The light he called day, and the darkness he called night. So the first day in creation, YHUH divided day and night. And then lastly, the parameters of the day. Are there not 12? This is Yahusha. Are there not 12 hours in a day? So you have all of these encompasses the first day. It's the first day of the year. It's the first day of the month of Abib. On the first day, light and day and night, or light and darkness, is divided, meaning it is separated into two equal parts, which for us would be 12 hours a day, 12 hours a night. And that's what that says here. Are there not 12 hours in a day? That is how you compile the first day of the year, right? So the first day of the calendar, these two verses show both that the first day of the year separates day from light, and that it should be 12 hours long. This makes night 12 hours also, which I just said. These verses also show what time of the year the first day takes place. In addition, Bereshith 1, verses 11 and 12 show that the time of the year is when the trees are bearing fruit and the herbs and grasses of the field are growing. That correlates to the season, what we call spring. It might be called something else in your language, wherever you're at, but we call that springtime. In addition to this, I took it one step further. And I looked up the wheat and harvest seasons for both ancient and modern Egypt. So I went in the past and looked up what time of the year that the harvest season crops were going in ancient Egypt. And then I went forward to today to what time of year that modern Egypt have their wheat harvest growing, because that was a fact. And the evidence of the harvest season in scripture can be found in Shemuth chapter 9, verses 31 and 32. And I went and found that information, and it does correlate to what is known on the Gregorian calendar as the month of March, but on YHUH's calendar is the month of Abiyab. As growing seasons can vary in time, using equal day and night hours provides a more consistent measure for finding the beginning of the year. I say that because growing seasons can be early or late depending on the weather, and it is pretty much mercurial, meaning it can flow backward or forward in time, and that can throw off the date when you would start the calendar or start a feast. So because it can vary, growing seasons, you have a drought, you're not growing anything. You have too much rain, your crops are not going to grow, or anything like that. So using day and night is what takes precedent. So, just like in the video, when is the beginning, as you can see in the upper right hand corner, Now that we have evidence of what happens on the first day, we then look for when equal day and night happens. So I use dateandtime.com to look up the day length. I want to emphasize the day length. I do not use the equator when it's perpendicular, when the sun is perpendicular to it, what is known as the spring equinox. I don't use that. I'll go into that in a minute. I use the day length because that is what YHUH said, right? So we look up the hours for Cairo, Egypt, and if you have not seen when is the beginning, I would start with that first because I go into why I use Cairo, Egypt. And it's because Goshen, ancient Goshen, that's where Yasserel lived when they were enslaved in Egypt by Mitzrayim, Egypt. And Goshen can no longer be found on modern maps or GPS. So Cairo is 40 miles away from ancient Goshen. It is in the same time zone, and it's a short distance away. 40 miles isn't short if you're walking, but 40 miles is short if you're driving. All right. So I use Cairo for today. The first date of YHUH's calendar, Ab Yab 1st, equates to March 16th on a Gregorian calendar. Now that we have the parameters of the year and we know when the first day is, the rest of the calendar or the rest of the feast can be mapped out. So here it is, March of this year in Cairo. Here's the sunset, sunrise times. We're not looking for that. We're actually looking for the day length. Again, it's important to separate the positioning of the sun with the day length. All right, there's a difference. People equate that as the same thing, and it's not. So you go down, you find when it's the closest to 12 hours right here. 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 48 seconds. So it's about 12 seconds away from being straight up 12 hours day, 12 hours night. And you don't go over that, right? Because it has to be 12 hours, not more. And you try not to do less, but you try to get close because it never is perfectly 12 hours. We see it here. It correlates to the 16th day of March. Now, I did do this for every year for the next 10 years, and it is the same day. The reason why I used timeanddate.com because it had the most accurate measurements. This website uses coordinates from NASA. It uses coordinates from the European Space Commission. I might have the name of that wrong, but there's an equivalent to NASA in Europe. I forget the name. It also works with different observatories all over the earth, and it speaks with scientists and people who look at astronomy. I did use other websites that calculate, sunrise, sunset, and day length times. But when I looked into the background, like what is their source material for those websites, one used some sun equation off of Wikipedia and GPS. Another one just depended on Google. And then I never got any feedback from the other two. So I used 5 total, and I decided on dateandtime.com to get the most accuracy. All right, so day and night versus sun and moon. And I just talked about that briefly, how there is a distinction, okay? And this goes into people wanting to use Bereshith verses chapter 1 verses 14 through 19. A lot of people, including people back in ancient times, used the 4th day of creation as the start of the calendar. Number one, that just doesn't make sense, just using common sense. If YHUH says the first day is the first day, why would man start his first day on the 4th day of YHUH's count? All right, because as we talked about in YHUH's calendar and the Gregorian, YHUH determines the time when it starts and when it finishes. So if he says this is the first day, that's the first day, not the fourth day. Okay, so the purpose is to recognize that day and night is separate from the sun and moon. On the fourth day of creation, YHUH creates the sun and moon to support what he did on the first day, separate day and night. This emphasizes the importance of what was done on the first day. Counting day and night is what is priority, not the sun and the moon. And what I mean, the day length and the night time length. So as you can see here, on the first day, verses 3 through 5, YHUH divided the light from the darkness, and he called the light day and the darkness night. In verses 14 through 19, yes, let there be enough lights of the firmament to divide the day from night. The sun and the moon and the stars are to support the division of day and night. Okay, it says it further down here, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. Back here, YHUH divided the light from the darkness, and he called the light day, and he called the darkness night. So these are synonymous. To divide day from the night and to divide light from the darkness, same thing. But verses 14 through 19 support what YHUH did in verses 3 and 5. All right, so the next bit of concern when I got responses from people who purchased the calendar was, why are you not using the Equinox? So this addresses that. All right, so there's a couple of reasons, and I have them here. The first one, that all of that is mathematical calculations. So both the equator and the date for the vernal equinox are math calculations that are not based on physical or astronomical events. What do I mean by that? These are math estimates, and I mean estimate, right? They are not based on physically seeing or physically counting the daylight hours and physically counting the nighttime hours. It's not dependent on that, right? The equator, which is an imaginary line, was invented by, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this man. He was a Greek man. That's his name. He measured he estimated the circumference of the earth, right? He created the grids of longitude and latitude, and also designated the 5 climate zones on earth: 2 freezing zones at the poles, 2 moderate weather zones, and 1 zone for the tropics and the equator, which are the hotter zones. The second reason why the equinox is not a good measure, the date for the vernal equinox is also a calculation that is not based on the actual equal day and night that takes place in the firmament. It is not. The Roman Catholic Church uses what is called a computus. Now, a computus is any calculation of time, but they actually have a set, I don't know if it's a book, I don't know what it is, but they actually call it a computus, where they calculate the vernal equinox, which when they first did it, it was March 25th. Now we're talking about, at the beginning, the Julian calendar was introduced, I want to say 45 or 46 BC, and then the Gregorian calendar was introduced in, I want to say 1582 or something like that. So these are calculations, right? It's not a visual looking at what YHUH did. So when it was first calculated, they said March 25th. Then I know for many years, while we have all been living, the equinox was March 21st. Now this year, it's March 20th. And that is because it will gradually move over the centuries. And they have a table for that too, right? Now, this image over here, it talks about the solstices and the equinoxes. And according to scientists, that, the earth is a sphere shape. And during the spring and fall equinoxes, the axis is at a 90 degree angle. It's directly perpendicular to the sun. And when the equinox happens, the sun's directly falls on the imaginary equator, right? It's directly perpendicular to it, and the sunlight falls directly on the imaginary equator. All right? That's what we're told. The axis is at 0 degrees. In the winter, the earth tilts 23.5 degrees this way. And in the summer, the earth tilts 23.5 degrees that way. That's what we're told. All right. So the term equinox is a contradiction in and of itself, because even though the word means equal night, the actual measurement of it is the sun's or daylight placement. And I just talked about the axis and the 0 degrees and all that, right? You would think that the term would measure nighttime hours, since the word literally means equal night. To me, that's confusing. It's an oxymoron. I don't understand that. Now, there is the newer term equilux, meaning equal light, and it does attach itself to the actual astronomical event of equal day and night. So it also uses the sun as its measurement as far as where its placement is, right? So that's not great either, but because the Catholic Church has placed more importance on the equinox, primarily due to Easter and its calculation of it, the equilux is really of no consequence. I don't know about anywhere else, any other countries, but in the U.S., you don't hear the equilux being mentioned that much. It only began to be used in, what was it, 2003? 2006 or something like that. So even to this day, you don't really hear it that much. So the next thing I did was to calculate the difference between the calculated solstices and equinox using the computus that I mentioned, and then the actual days that it takes place using astronomical events, meaning what's actually happening, in the firmament, in the sky. So the vernal equinox, they say for this year, 2022, it's March 20th, but the actual event happened on March 16th. The solstices are the same. The autumn equinox, they say it's September 23rd. It actually happens September 26th. The winter solstice, they say the December 21st, but it actually happens a day after. So you can see here, this is to show you the correlation, the difference between what is calculated and what is actual. And YHUH's calendar depends on actual. These other dates are not really important, but this one is, right? For the purposes of finding the first day of the year. Not for that. All right? So the next part is an inconvenient Shabbat. I received questions about this, but more than that, I received complaints. According to YHUH's calendar, the Shabbat on this year falls on a Tuesday. And I got a lot of complaints about that. So let's just get into that. All right. So the difference in the weeks: named days of the week versus numbered days of the week. The day that we call Sunday historically has always been the first day of the week. And I'm not just talking about my country or European countries. I was able to correlate that back all the way back to the time of the Egyptians before Yasserel was enslaved, all the way back. Back during that society, it was dedicated to the sun deity Re, not Ra, Re, as in sun ray, uh, because he was the most important deity, so he got the first day, the day of the week, right? Now, everyone else has followed suit. It might be different in your country according to your religion and your language, but the first day of the week has always been dedicated to the sun deity or sun day. All right. Recently, in 1998, which is recent in the whole aspect of time, European countries made Monday the first day of the week for international business and commerce purposes and to make dates and time. They also address time, how to write down time and how to write down dates. They uniformed it for across the earth. This was done by the International Standardization Organization. So in Europe and maybe some other countries, Monday is the first day of the week and Sunday would be considered their Shabbat. But that's a recent change. That's not what it's been historically. The order of the days of the week are all different in many countries on earth, but they are all named after deities of various religions. I checked a few religions and they're all dedicated to some deity or other. Now, as opposed to numbered days, there are no deities associated with them as far as YHUH's calendar. All right. Instead, their order is from the value of their figures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? In YHUH's calendar, the numbered days take place over the astronomical event of equal day and night, which he performs. So once that happens, that's day 1. And then after that, you just count. And here's an example of that. So here's the first week of YHUH's calendar, the month of Abiab. And so here is when the first day, which is divided day and night, right? Which is exactly how it correlates in this verse. The day and night was divided on this day, which falls on the Gregorian date of this. And then you count, right? Because this is the first day. So you count 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It does not respect the name of the week. Saturday is dedicated to Saturn, right? Saturn was an actual deity in Roman mythology. Okay. YHUH's calendar is literally a number count. Once you have the parameters for his calendar, all you have to do is place the feats on the dates YHUH stipulated. We all know that when you read scripture, YHUH tells you on the 14th day of this month is Pesach. On the rest of the days, from the 14th day to the 21st day, you will celebrate, Pesach and the Mazuth. And he does that with each one. So once you set up the calendar, you set up the days, you set up how it says in scripture, you literally just plop down the feast on the dates YHUH stipulated. That's what I mean by number count. But because we were born and live in a section of the earth where the Roman Catholic Gregorian calendar takes precedent, the Shabbat takes place on the 7th day of the week, which is Saturn's day. But this is not YHUH's Sabbath day and is not YHUH's calendar. It's important to make that distinction and to separate one from another. His Shabbat takes place 6 days after the first day, right? And I have the verses there. Okay. YHUH's Shabbat falls on a Tuesday on the Gregorian calendar for 2022. For most, this is inconvenience because it is in the middle of the work week on the Gregorian calendar. But nothing, absolutely nothing of YHUH's has ever fallen in line with what man does. because we are to follow him. He does not conform to us. And it's that way when you first learned about Yahuwah and you stopped using God. You learned about what truly the covenant says, and you stopped following what your church or mosque or uh, synagogue said, or whatever you call your place of worship, right? You stopped following those things and you saw the real truth of what Yahweh says. This is no different. The Shabbat is no different. It does take effort. It does take sacrifice. It is inconvenient, but it is the truth. And it's Yahuwah's truth. Next section. Last section. Yahuwah's calendar versus the Gregorian. All right, drift or no drift. There are several differences between the Gregorian calendar and Yahuwah's calendar that have been displayed in When is the Beginning video. This is talking about the difference between the calendars in the flow of time, right? So let's start with the Gregorian. The Gregorian calendar is 365.24 days long. Yahuwah's calendar is 364 days long. The Gregorian calendar drifts forward 1 day annually and then 2 days forward on leap years. Yahuwah's calendar is stagnant. It does not move from year to year. And as I stated earlier, I calculated Yahuwah's calendar for the next 10 years. And guess what? At least for the next 10 years, I know that it starts on the same date. Abiyah 1st correlates to March 16th on the Gregorian calendar, and it does not move, right? So on the Gregorian calendar side, within 5 years, the extra 1.24 days added to the extra leap day totals to 5.96 days, which is almost 6 days. That's how much drift the Gregorian calendar drifts within a 5-year range. This means that the Gregorian calendar, again, what I just said. So here's an example. I went through on the Gregorian calendar and I looked up January the 1st for 5 years. So I started in 2021, it was on a Friday. 2022, Saturday. 23, Sunday. 24, which is a leap year, Monday. Then the next year after leap year, on 2025, Wednesday. It jumps 2 days after a leap year. So you got 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, 5, 6 days drift. And I did that because the complaint was that Yahuwah's Shabbat should not be a different day every year. Yahuwah's Shabbat does not drift on his calendar. It is always on the 7th day of every year. The Gregorian calendar drifts within itself. So when you place Yahuwah's Shabbat on the Gregorian calendar, it will show a drift because you're prefacing the Gregorian calendar over Yahuwah's calendar. It will shift because the Gregorian calendar itself shifts. And that's the point I wanted to make. Just one moment, please. All right, thank you. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so this is an emphasis on that point that the Gregorian calendar drifts by itself, right? 365.2 days is called a tropical year. That means that it takes this amount of time for the Earth to rotate around the sun back to its original starting point. So if you use the vernal equinox in 2022, they're saying that a tropical year, which tropical is the Greek word for turning, so it takes the Earth to revolve around the sun, or makes its turns around the sun 365.24 days to get back to the vernal equinox. Now, this is not what YHUH represents in scripture. YHUH doesn't say anything about the earth revolving around the sun. He says that the sun is placed in the firmament in earth. He doesn't say what we have all been taught and what the world goes by. But I'm telling you this because a lot of people still believe in this. Although it's not YHUH's truth, a lot of people believe in this. This is what's reinforced and enforced in most of the earth today. 0.24 extra comes out to be approximately 5 hours and 48 minutes, or almost a quarter, or I should say a third of the day if you're using 12 hours, but a quarter of the day if you're using a 24-hour period, which that's what we're taught, that a day is 24 hours, which that's not what YHUH says, but that's what we're taught. So it would be 1/4 of a day. The 0.24 of a day, when multiplied by the 4 years, is almost a day, 0.96. And you add to that the extra leap day. That means if you do not compare the Gregorian to YHUH's calendar, just the Gregorian by itself, emphasis, it drifts 2 days every 4 years. So when you compare the Gregorian calendar to YHUH's calendar, it drifts 6 days within a 5-year range. If you just compare the Gregorian to itself, it drifts 2 days every 4 years, right? And we show that again with the January. Looking at what day that January falls on when you look at the days. 2 days drift. So why is this important? Because when you try to place events from YHUH's calendar onto the Gregorian calendar, you will see what seems like a floating feast, floating Shabbat, whatever, from year to year. As stated earlier, the Abib 1st on YHUH's calendar correlates to March 16th on the Gregorian one. On the Gregorian calendars, March 16th moves from Wednesday to Thursday when you look at 2022 versus 2023, which is what you can see here. Here is the beginning of the year of YHUH's year on the Gregorian calendar, right? On YHUH's calendar, it's just Abiyab 1st. It stays that way for the next 10 years. But on the Gregorian calendar, the March 16th correlates to the first day, and it's Wednesday in 2022, and then it switches to Thursday in 2023. Likewise, the first Shabbat takes place on the 7th day of Abiyab, but it's March 22nd on the Gregorian calendar. Again, the day switches from Tuesday in 2022 through Wednesday on 2023, and that's the green here. This is the Shabbat, right? It's Tuesday 22, it's Wednesday in 2023. So you have to make sure, if you keep doing that, which the majority of calendars, when they calculate YHUH's feast, they always preference the Gregorian calendar. And I understand, because that's what we live by, that's what we go by, but YHUH's calendar is separate. And when you think about Yasharel, when they were using YHUH's calendar, they were a nation unto themselves. They did not have to subject themselves to some other people's calendar until they were sent into exile with the Assyrians and with the Babylonians, and they were under Egyptian, occupation, right? they were enslaved in Egypt. Then they had to follow their calendars. But when Yasserel became its own nation, they were able to follow the calendars and didn't have to reference anybody else's calendars. We don't have that benefit today. So it's important to separate YHUH's calendar from the Gregorian calendar and to not do what is commonly done. All right, so that's it. So in conclusion, we talked about what parameters in scriptures was used to make YHUH's calendar. We determined how the first day of the calendar was determined according to scripture. We talked about that solstice, equinoxes, equators, and tropical years are mathematical equations and are not based on real events. We talked about how the Gregorian calendar drifts in time, and that's why you see what seems to be a floating Shabbat or a floating feast day. And then lastly, we talked about the importance of keeping the two calendars separate and keeping the confusion down, and how the confusion comes about when you mix the calendars. So I would like to thank you. Thank you so much for this today. I hope I answered all questions. Here are the source and resources that I use while compiling this video. And I just want to thank you, and may YHUH give you wisdom and understanding in his word. May he keep you in shalom, you and your family. May he heal all wounds and give you provision according to your needs. And may he baruch your hand for any work and baruch it and increase it. Thank you so much. If you want to contact me about this video or any other videos, this is my email, YHUHderek@mail.com, not Gmail. I often get that confused. Just mail.com. Thank you and shalom.